You're listening to The Real Deal Conversations, a podcast designed to encourage, inspire, and equip you by sharing real stories and meaningful conversations that bring real life to the surface. I'm your host, Megan Deal. Let's dive in. I am with Brock Blansit, the head basketball coach of Nixa. I am from Nixa. My kids attend Nixa. I am very excited to have Brock on. Thank you so much for coming on.
Excited to be here.
Okay, so let's just kind of dive in. I just want to get to know you a little bit. You know, who is the man behind the coach we see on the court? So what inspired you to become a basketball coach, and what has kept you passionate about it over the years?
So this is my 28th year coaching. I absolutely love being around kids. I love it.
Yeah.
It keeps you young. There's some days it maybe makes you feel a little bit older.
Yeah.
But for the most part, it really does. It keeps you young. I love working with other coaches.
Yeah.
I love being around other coaches, have great ideas that we can bounce off of. And it's my 28th year, and I think I love it more now than I did my first year.
Wow, that's awesome. And when you first got started in it, your first year, were you intimidated?
I was scared to death.
Really?
And I started out at Stratford, and my first day, I'll never forget, I looked like I was about 12.
Yeah.
And I had a teacher come up and actually ask me if I was a new student. That was the first day. And
that's a confidence builder.
Yeah. And I felt really young at the moment. But that's how I got my start. But, it was a scary thing getting started because I was only 22, 23 out of college. And so, but the older I get, the more I honestly love it.
Yeah. And when you started out, just these other coaches who are newer to that space, what would you say to them to overcome that nervousness, that fear?
You got to have a good mentor. Mm-hmm. You've got to have somebody that you can call, that you can trust. I still call different coaches after games, after practices that maybe didn't go real well, and get feedback because they've all been there. We've all been there. Mm-hmm. We've all had good days, bad days. And this profession will eat you up and spit you out pretty quick because the nature of the job is you're just not going to make everybody happy. That's just how it is. And so you got to have a good mentor that you can bounce ideas off of and talk to on a nightly basis.
I love that. That is such good advice. So can you talk about the role of mentorship in your coaching style? And so the mentors that you just talked about. So what's some great feedback that they have given you that you've held on to over the years?
I would say, honestly, is just to stay as positive as possible. Mm-hmm. I really believe that. I talk a lot about it with our players. For me personally, I'm very big on relationships and things that we'll talk about, I'm sure, throughout these next 20 minutes. But with my coaching staff as well, everything we want to do is be positive. Mm-hmm. Very few times will you see me just absolutely lose it. Mm-hmm. I try not to because we tell our kids that we got to keep our composure. Mm-hmm. So if I'm breaking clipboards and acting like an absolute lunatic, then how do I tell my kids the same thing?
Yeah.
So we try to keep things as positive as possible, whether it's in practice or games.
That's good. So what is a memorable moment from your coaching journey that shaped how you lead your team today?
I won't mention any names, but a coach that I worked for years ago, I remember he had a moment, which we've all had our moments, but he had a clipboard moment in the locker room. I'll never forget it. Mm-hmm. And snaps the clipboard over his knee and tells a kid, he kind of loses it a little bit. Mm-hmm. And I think we've all been there, done that, but I'll never forget that moment. Mm-hmm. And I remember thinking, because as a player, I played for a coach who was a little bit old school like that, and I hated it. Mm-hmm. He was a great coach, but I used to hate it. And I never wanted to be that type of coach. Mm-hmm. And that was actually a negative moment that was positive for me in the long run. Mm-hmm. So sometimes those negative moments, you can turn them around to be something real positive. And I've had some good moments too. Well, mostly great moments that I always thought, I want to be like that guy. I want to be his coach, or maybe I don't want to be like this guy. And one of them is Steve Jenkins, my old basketball coach at Evangel. He was not doing real well right now. He retired a few years ago and his health's going down. And he's a guy that I absolutely look up to. Whatever you want to say about a lot of coaches you play for, he is hands down one of the greatest men I've ever been around.
That's awesome.
And I'll never forget the way that he treated me as a player.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I love that you say we can learn from negative experiences, because you're right. Those are just as much learning opportunities for us of what not to do. And sometimes I like those more because it's learning from people and not learning from my own mistake in the moment. So yes, I agree. So how do you foster a team culture that encourages both personal and athletic growth?
Well, first off, it starts at the top. It starts with me. And if I don't have any type of relationship with our players, our assistant coaches aren't going to have relationships with their players. Our players' relationships with each other probably won't be as good. And players can see through you. They know whether you're faking it or not. And there's coaches that will try, but down deep, they don't really mean what they're saying.
Yeah.
And I think it's extremely important. And I think it starts with me. And if I can foster that with our kids, down to my assistant coaches, down to our players, our managers, it goes through the whole program. And that goes for any sport that you play. I think that one or two really good coaches, like to say about bad apples can spread. I think it's just the opposite as well. If you have some good coaches that truly care, I think that spreads through the other coaches, and it makes you have to step your game up, be better as well.
Absolutely. I love that. Yeah. All right. How do you help your players not only become better athletes, but better individuals off the court and prepare them for life?
We took some of our varsity guys to the Miracle Field. And this is something that I'm passionate about. We are involved in Champions Committed to Kids, the Miracle Field, which I think might be through the Park Board, and then Champions Committed to Champion Athletes. These are three programs that I believe in. I had an uncle years ago, Down syndrome, one of the greatest men I know. Well, dead. He's obviously not alive now, but Uncle Bob was awesome. And I'm very passionate about that. And so we try to do things like that with our team, give them to understand, one, you're very fortunate. You're fortunate to have what you have.
Yes.
And secondly, you need to give back to those other kids. And that's something that our program does a lot. We've got a fundraiser we're going to, bowling fundraiser here in a couple of weeks, kind of along those same lines. But those are things that those kids will take the rest of their life. They can think what they want of me as a coach, but a kid will never forget how you treat them, ever. When they're 50 years old, they'll look back and say, Coach Blansit treated me like this, whatever that is. And their opinion is their reality.
Yeah.
However they feel, that's what they think. And that's the way it happened. And hopefully they'll say good things. And that's, that's our goal.
Yeah. And just teaching them kindness and empathy. And so the basketball program, I'm going to sidetrack real quick, but you incorporate some of those kids into the basketball season. How do you do that?
We started probably, I'd say about 15 years ago, and Alex Straker, and he's still with us. Alex is probably close to 30. And he's been with us for, 12 to 15 years. And we got some other kids that have come and gone, but we've had a few that have stayed with us throughout the course. Got an email from someone the other day, a 26-year-old guy that's moved in, looking for us to help out. And I have a hard time saying no.
Yeah.
So we'll have 4 or 5 of those kids helping. And it's a highlight of their day.
Oh, I bet it is.
Practicing games, and they ride the bus with us. And I try to hook them up with the gear, and their families just love it. It keeps them involved in school and keeps those kids excited about coming to school. And I've had several of those parents tell me, hey, if it wasn't for that, I'm not sure that it got up and come to school, because they hate school. And so that's some of the things that we can do to help.
Oh, that's so cool. I love that. Especially being in the mentorship space with my job, I would guarantee that's the highlight of their day. It probably makes them feel so special. That's awesome.
We love it.
Oh, that's awesome. All right. So how do you balance winning with developing the character and well-being of your players? So I'm a big fan of, character development and so how do you balance that?
So it's funny, because on the way over here, I was thinking about some things we were going to discuss. And obviously winning is important. We wouldn't keep score.
Yeah.
Okay. But I can assure you, as much as any coach, I won't say more than any coach, because I don't know every coach's heart. At the end of the day, winning really isn't that important. When these kids graduate, we could win 4 straight state titles when your kid plays in our program. And that's awesome. And that's what we want, obviously. But once again, when they're 35, 40 years old, they're going to always remember, how did Coach Blansit treat me?
Yeah.
And that's hands down the most important thing. It's something that I strive to do on a daily basis, whether it's texting our guys. I'll text them after games, especially those guys that maybe didn't get to play. Say, hey, sorry you didn't get in the game tonight, but once you know, you're just much part of this team as anyone else. Yeah. Proud of you. See you practice tomorrow. And that's some things I try to do. I'm not perfect at it, but I try to do everything we can to make sure that winning is not the only thing. But I'm not going to lie to you and telling you winning is important.
Right.
Because, we wouldn't keep score if it didn't matter.
And coaches wouldn't have jobs.
Absolutely. 100%.
So yes, it does matter.
And I'll say Nixa, we're supposed to win games. That's what we do as coaches.
Yeah.
But I can honestly tell you, I've never, and I've been there 24 years, ever felt like, you better win this game, Our administrators are awesome. And we're very fortunate in Nixa to have their support. And, as long as you treat your kids right and do the right thing, that's the most important thing.
Nixa is definitely a community.
No doubt about it. Small school. It's still it's a big school with small field. Because I remember Nixa, that school, high school, that field, we used to haul hay out of that field when I was a kid.
Oh, wow.
There was nothing on that side of Nixa, very few houses. And now, as you know, that's where everything is in Nixa.
Yeah.
The Dairy Queen used to be on this side, on the east side, and that's where everything was. And nothing was on the west. And now it's reversed. Yep. Everything's on the west side.
Yeah.
And so it has definitely grown.
Yes.
But it's still got a little bit of a small town feel.
It is. I love how we rally. Yeah. Okay. I'm not going to be biased. I'm going to move away from Nixa. Okay. In what ways do you encourage your players to stay motivated through difficult seasons or tough losses?
I think that's where you grow the most is when a kid is struggling, maybe with their playing time, maybe the way they're shooting the ball, maybe our team's lost 3 in a row. That's when you really find out what kind of culture you got in your program. It's easy to be positive when you're winning. When you're winning 8, 9, 10 games in a row, practices are great. Kids are happy for the most part. Parents, everyone's excited. But you lose 3 or 4 in a row, you find out what your culture is really like. And I think those are the biggest times, or the most times you'll grow as a person, as a player, as a coach. Find out a lot about yourself in those times.
And what would you, if a player is, being really hard on themselves or overcritical of themselves, and you guys just lost a game, what would you say to those players to help shift their mindset, help shift their focus, perspective?
Yeah. Well, a lot of one that they have to understand, a lot of things happen in a game. And, a kid is always hard on himself, just like coach. Anytime we lose, if you don't think a coach don't go home and lay there in the middle of the night and think I should have done this, we do it just as much. But you try to tell those kids there's a lot of things that happen in the game. Why did we lose this game? I can assure you it's not because you're 0 for 5. It's because we got out rebounded. We had 16 turnovers. We didn't guard. It's a team effort. I coach tennis too. And in tennis, that's an individual sport. So it's on you. In basketball, you can have a great night and still lose, and vice versa. You can be terrible and still win. So even though it's an individual sport with team concepts in basketball, you've got to keep those kids somehow as positive as possible. But a kid knows when they're playing well and when they're not. And it's natural. When you're not shooting the ball well, you're going to get down, just like in baseball. If you're in a hitting slump, you're going to feel bad even though you're still winning. So you got to try to find a balance of those two, of winning and also trying to keep the kid positive when they're not playing well.
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to ask this side note. So how do you keep yourself in balance? So, those hard games, how could we have done this differently? How do you balance it?
That's an easy one. My wife.
Oh, I love that.
I've got an amazing wife. Coach Perry and I have talked a lot about this. If you don't have a supportive wife and you're a coach, it's not going to work. And I've done it for 28 years because of her. And if I don't have her, it's tough to do, because there are a lot of nights after a tough game, she knows I maybe don't want to talk and she kind of leaves me alone. Or if I open up, we'll sit outside and talk for an hour or whatever. And I tell you, if you want to know what's really going on in the coach's head, go talk to their spouse, because they will know what's going on. And I do agree with you. Because coaching, it takes up a lot of time in the season. And if your spouse isn't on board, it's going to be very difficult. Very difficult. And you're with those kids as much as you are your family for about 4 months.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's good. I agree. All right. So what is the most important life lesson basketball has taught you, and how do you pass that on to your players?
It's just, you got to work together. Team sports, I know that sounds really elementary-ish, but it's a fact. You've got to work together as a team. And, when you've got kids that aren't getting to play, how do you get them to be a part of the team? How do you get them to make, to feel a part? Because let's face it, if you're not playing, whether you're winning or losing, every kid wants to play. We all get that. But the fact of the matter is, it's just not going to happen. Yeah. The odds of everyone playing the same amount just ain't going to happen. So how do you keep that kid involved? We got to get them to understand this is a team. It's not about me. It's not about you. It's about all of us. And at the end of the day, if you go to the Final Four, that banner is going to have your name up there, and it's not going to say how many minutes you played. It's not going to say how many points you averaged. It's going to have your name in that banner, and that's all it's going to say.
Yep. And I like that you say the team, because I think it's really easy we should always be cheering people on no matter what place we're at. We should always, not be on the sideline pouting or frustrated because it is our team.
Yep.
It is our team. And I would want somebody cheering me on if I was on the court and not angry and pouting on the side. And so I do think there is that mindset of, wait a minute, this is my family. This is my community. And even though my minutes are whatever tonight, I'm going to cheer my family on, my community on. So I'm with you in that. That's good. All right. How do you handle pressure and expectations from your team and fans and parents? I always say this. I feel like referees have the thickest skin. They have to have the thickest skin. And then like coaches, like I always think about you guys, y'all, even if you go into it with no thick skin, you're going to have some thick skin by the end of it. So how do you handle the pressure of parents, players, all of it?
I don't, everybody's so different. I don't know if... For myself, you just go into coaching knowing that you're going to have people not happy with you. It's a tough question to answer because I don't really know how. It's just something I think I've done over 28 years and you just play. I do have a good relationship with our officials. That is something that I've always strived to do. I'm not going to say I don't ever get on it, but I really try to keep a good relationship because you know what? If there's a 50-50 call and you've been on them the whole game, you know what? We want to have a good relationship. And you know what? They got a tough job. It ain't like these guys are making $10,000 reffing. They're not making that much money.
Right.
And they're doing it because they want to be involved and they love basketball too. So those pressure situations, hopefully we as a coaching staff and as players have prepared in practice because that's when you really prepare. All games is to see what you've done in practice. What's your preparation look like? Don't mean you can't make changes during a game, but let's face it, we play a lot of teams around here over and over. We pretty well know what they're going to do. They know what we're going to do. So what we've done in practice, that's a good time for everyone to see. Have you been doing anything in practice?
Yeah.
And so that's, pressure situation. We just hope that we're ready to go and kind of let the chips fall where they may. Try to keep your composure.
And would you say, just like in the very beginning, you said going into coaching when you were 22, there was intimidation and there was all that or nervousness, would you say that over the years, you've just kind of built that ability to, deal with that pressure just for like coaches, younger coaches, speaking to the younger coaches, speaking to the newer coaches who maybe have not found their balance in dealing with the pressure. Would you say that just over time?
Yeah, you definitely develop more thick skin the older you get. I mean, you just realize, and it's just the nature of the beast. And when I say this, it's just, parents are just parents. And you know what? I don't think parents really mean a lot of the things they say about a coach. They get a little tunnel vision with their kid, which I had 2 kids that played, and I get it. I understand it's hard for your kids to sit on the bench and come home and upset. And my girls I don't understand this and that. You're just going to have to just, hang in there. Yeah. And it's a hard job for parents. Coaches that have never had kids play sports don't understand. And so some of the coaches I've worked for, they didn't have kids that played, and they're like, I don't understand why parents just can't go and sit and watch the game and just cheer their kids on. I'm like, that's just not how it works.
Yeah.
Because your kid, you cheer for your kids, but when they come home and they're upset, I get it. I understand. And so you just developed a thick skin. I don't think parents really hate a lot of coaches as much as they do in that moment.
Yeah.
But it is a part of it.
One week they love you, one week they don't. The next week they're going to love you again. So I holding on to that, I think should be very loosely because parents' emotions are so up and down. It's just, it is natural. We have 3 kids in sports. Daniel played basketball in college and it's the nature of the beast. It is. So, all right. How do you stay grounded and maintain perspective? So how do you stay grounded in high pressure? We just talked about pressure, but, a positive mindset. What is some practical tools for younger coaches to stay grounded, to not stay, the clipboard, to what can they do in the moment besides a deep breath?
Yep. I go back to what we discussed earlier, is your spouse. You need to have a good spouse that's supportive. And I'll tell you one story. I'll never forget this. I was a JV coach at Nixa. This has been probably 12, 13 years ago. We're playing Glendale in our tournament, and we were playing absolutely terrible. We're getting beat by about 25, and I was so frustrated. I'll never forget, after a timeout, I turned to my kids, and someone had sat in my seat, and I popped off something real smart aleck, just pretty much jerky. Basically, scoot your butt down, get out of my chair. And my wife was sitting right behind our bench, and I'll never forget, because all our spouses have a look. You have that look, and and I caught her eye, and I thought, uh-oh, I'm in big trouble. And I'll never forget, she told me after game, she said, if you ever act like that again, I'll never come to another game.
Wow.
And let's say I was pretty grounded. So I have a really supportive spouse. That makes me think of my dad being a pastor. We always had sit in the front row, and if my brothers and I weren't acting right, we got that look on stage, it'll be a long day at home. We knew. But as far as staying grounded, I mean, it goes back to mentorship. You got to have good mentors. You got to have good assistant coaches that are supportive. There's nothing worse than an assistant coach that maybe saying things behind your back you don't know about. I've been very fortunate with that. I got some good ones. And then your spouse is very important with that too.
Cecily asked me earlier, for you guys being like, who's Cecily? She does all of my business development and everything. She asked me earlier the question, do you feel it's necessary to have a mentor? And I was like, you don't have to have a mentor to do what you do, but if you want to grow, if you want to learn, we're not always right. We're just not. I would love to think I'm right all the time, and I'm not. And I believe so much of what you're saying, you've mentioned mentors several times. And I do think there is power in having a mentor and having that outside perspective and somebody who you can go to and trust that is going to have your back when you tell them the thing you need to tell them to get perspective on. So I really appreciate that you have mentioned having a mentor so many times, because there's so much value to that. So, all right. Last two questions. What advice would you give to young coaches just starting out in their careers?
I keep saying the same thing about the mentor, so I'll skip that part. I really believe, so you're with your assistant coaches. And of course, that's kind of the questions. I don't know if you're a head coach. I guess I would say you have to have good assistant coaches. You have to. I'm telling you, like I said, you're with the assistant coaches all the time. You're behind closed door with the assistants all the time. We don't always agree, but we got agreement that when we leave that office, we're in agreement. You may have your opinion on this game or what you think, but I think that's one of the most important things. You better go to a school that has good administrators. And a lot of people, when they apply for jobs, and I understand that first when you're just trying to find a job, I get that. But if you don't have the backing of administrators, it's a long road. And a lot of success we have at Nixa is because of our administration. We have awesome school board. We have awesome administrators. Our athletic director is incredible. They are so supportive. If you've not seen our facilities, I don't know if you've seen our boys' locker rooms, like a Division I locker room. It is unbelievable. You've seen the football field, the new facility, their indoor facility they're building. That's all because of our administrators. And you better have good administrators, or it's going to be tough.
So say somebody's listening and they aren't as fortunate to have that, or, they're going, okay, that would be great, but I'm not in that position right now. So what advice would you give them to be able to navigate that? And you can pause and think about this for a minute, but what kind of mindset could they have to get through that?
That is a good question. I can't say I know the exact answer to. I would probably be looking at applying somewhere else, honestly, but you hopefully have some other coaches that you can bounce some ideas off of without just sounding like you're sitting around and complaining all the time. Because that's not something you want to do either. But that's a tough situation, honestly. I think that's as tough as anything. And I've been on both sides that I've been very fortunate to work at 3 really good schools and work for 3 really good head coaches. I've coached a lot of sports, and it's funny. I've played all 3 head coaches I've worked for are all totally different, but I've learned something from each of them positively. And then there are things about each 3. I'm like, I don't want to do that and that and that. And so that's a tough one. It is a tough question.
But I do think kind of what you said, you learn, and the back end of that was, I don't want to do that. And I think if they could have the mindset of, okay, I don't agree with this, but this is building me and refining me for what I believe I'll be in the future, you know, and to develop and to kind of have that mindset of, okay, I don't like this, but I can learn from it and just use this season you're in as learning opportunities, you know? So, all right. What legacy do you hope to leave behind as a coach, both on and off the court?
That's an easy one. So for me, I've said this and I could talk about this for about 30 minutes. I obviously want to be known as a good coach. You want people to say good things about you as a coach. Coach Blansit, he knew what he was doing. But I'm telling you, and I know that people don't believe me when I say this, I am telling you at the end of the day, your son, other kids that will play for me, will know how I treated them. And it is important to me that when they graduate, they will at least say, I'm glad that I played for Coach Blansit. I'm glad I was in Nixa basketball program, whether they played every second or didn't play at all. It truly is very important to me. And that means a lot to me. Some kids, unfortunately, they're going to equate their playing time to what I think about them. And that's just not true. And it bugs me because that is one thing that just drives me crazy. Playing time and what I think there are times you'll play a kid that actually drives you crazy, but he's just better than other kids. So he's going to play. So it doesn't correlate, you know? And so I just want those kids that don't get to play as much. I told you earlier, I try to send texts these guys. It is important that they know that I care about them. And it really is. And it's my 28th year. I'm definitely more towards the end than I am the beginning. So who knows how long that'll be in the next 5-6 years. But I hope our players can say he cared about us. He took us to do things that were fun. I want our kids to have fun. And that's something I've not mentioned. That's something very important to me. We as coaches sometimes take fun out of the game because we put so much pressure on them to win because we want to win so much. You take all that fun out. And I try to tell them in big games during a timeout. I say, I hope you guys are having fun. It's tied up and front of 6,000 people in the blue and gold and kids are nervous. I said, this is why you guys do all this off season. This is supposed to be a blast. You know, when we're kids, we're 5, 6 years, 7 years old. We don't go outside and play basketball because it was not fun and not as boring or play football or play baseball outside with our buddies. We play because it's a blast. So why do we have to take that out just because they get older? Why is it in high school? Does it not have to be fun? And because when you get to college, it becomes more of a job. It's a little different. You know, play professional sports, it's literally a job. So this time right now, I want our kids to say it was fun and coach cared about me. That's the two most important things for me.
That's awesome. I love that. Coach Blansit, thank you for coming on. It was a pleasure.
I appreciate you having me.
Thank you.